I started experiencing symptoms of bipolar disorder when I was around 15 years old. And I knew that something wasn't right, and I couldn't really figure out how to explain it to other people, to talk about it with my parents, with teachers, even my friends, because it scared me. I didn't know why I was going through these things and having these symptoms of mania and hypomania and depression. And I felt really alone, and I felt really worthless. And I think that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to ask for help, is because I felt like I wasn't worth it. I felt like on some level I had done this to myself and it was my fault. And since I felt so ashamed and so isolated, alone, hopeless, I didn't think that I could get any better. To be honest, I didn't think this problem even had a name. I was diagnosed when I was 17 because things got pretty bad, and my parents started to notice that I wasn't the typical teenager. I was going through some really pronounced struggles, and with that diagnosis at first came some sense of release, this idea that, okay, this isn't just me, my problem has a name. And there was really kind of hope with the diagnosis at first, because I thought, you know what, now I have a language to talk about what I'm going through. I have a language to ask for help, and doctors and other professionals like therapists who their job is to help people like me who are struggling with mental illness. But the more and more I started identifying with my mental illness, and the more and more other people heard about my mental illness, I realized that there was a lot of stigma surrounding it, and people started treating me differently, like I wasn't the funny, overachieving, person who just wanted to be a friend to everyone and do well in school, who loved pets and music. Instead, I became sick. I was known as kind of a sick person, and it seemed like people were always waiting for something to happen, for something in my mental illness to act up, for there to be problems. And I didn't want to be seen as a problem, but I really thought that I was a problem. And so I stopped getting help. I stopped taking my medication. I made the decision that, you know what, maybe if I stop taking this, it means these medications and going to therapy, it means that I didn't actually have the disorder, which of course isn't true. But I think when I was a teenager, I just really wanted to believe that I was okay. And I didn't really know where the mental illness ended and I began. And so I struggled with understanding my identity and understanding my value. The fact that mental illness or no, I'm a worthwhile human being, and I deserve to have friends and experiences and the right to go to school and do well. When I was first diagnosed, it seemed kind of like overnight. A few people treated me differently. I had a guidance counselor tell me that I should probably rethink going to college, because I now had this illness and nothing else had changed. I still had the same GPA, the same extracurricular activities, but now I had a label. And that was really hard, because that stigma and that prejudice about ability, for a minute I believed it, and I really thought that, oh, these people are right, I can't achieve my goals and I have to figure out, another way to live my life, not on my own terms, but based on my illness. Luckily, I did have a lot of support, and I still do. Growing up, I have really supportive family and friends and a partner. And I soon began to realize that this is my life. And while I did have to redefine success a bit differently, because there are limitations, it's really hard for me to work a 9-to-5 job in an office. My brain and my body don't fit well in a cube. They tend to act up when they're contained. And I realized that part of my life I need accommodations and certain types of things that it's not about, getting a handout, it's about leveling the playing field so I have the same opportunities as others. It's about looking at equity. And the reality is I have redefined success and I've accomplished my goals. I've started really being able to see my own worth, and I want to reflect that back to other people who struggle with mental illness, especially those who have an intersectional identity, which means not only maybe they have a mental illness, but maybe they are a person of color and they're poor. And these factors make living with a mental illness even harder because you can't access your resources, or your supports are limited. And I think ultimately mental illness, the narrative around mental illness tells you that you're not worth it, you're not good enough, you shouldn't try, nobody loves you or cares about you. But that is just the sickness talking. And what's really important is for you to treasure and value yourself and see yourself through the sickness, because you're worth it. And of course, there are going to be barriers, and some are harder for others, but I think that's why projects like this and agencies like the Consumer Health Coalition are so important, because their main mission is to demystify, dismantle stigma and bias so that people living with all kinds of mental illnesses and disabilities and other factors, again, like poverty, they have support, they have an access to resources and to people so they can build relationships. For me, one of the most valuable experiences and valuable means for me to kind of gain control over my mental illness and not let it define me was to meet other people who had bipolar disorder and learn from them about their experiences, what it was like and how they manage it, and how it's something that exists but it doesn't have to dominate their existence. And I got excited about this project because if I can help somebody else see their own worth through disease, then it's not in vain, and I do believe in giving back. So that's me and the topic of worth. Thanks for listening.